Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile found...
From the studios of Blackwater Media in the city of Atlanta, it's time for another episode of the Shadowland Radio Show. I'm your host, Dr. William Lester. On this edition of the show, A Strange World. The Ahul. The Ahul is a mysterious flying creature that some have described as a giant monster bat. Others have described it as a flying primate. Its name comes from the sound that it is said to make. It is said to live in the deepest parts of the jungles of Java and can be found across most of Indonesia. The Ahul is described as having an ape-like face with large dark eyes, large claws on its forearms, and a body covered in gray fur. It is said to have a wingspan of 10 feet. Its flattened forearm supports its leathery wings. It is reported as being seen squatting on the forest floor and appeared to be the size of a small child, about 4 feet in height. The Ahul spends its days in waterfall caves, while it spends nights flying across the jungle waterways, scooping up fish with large claws located on the top of its forearms. The Ahul was first described by a scientist named Dr. Ernest Bartels in 1925. He observed the creature while exploring a waterfall near the Salik Mountains. The Wuhan Toads. There are giant albino toad-like creatures that are said to live in China's isolated Hubei province and are known to be horrible monsters. In 1962, local fishermen tried to get rid of these creatures by dropping dynamite into the waters where the monster toads were found. In 1987, 9 scientists from Peking University went to the area to study the creatures. They were led by Professor Chin Mok-chun. While the men were setting up their equipment, 3 of the creatures rose from the water and swam in their direction. One of the creatures attacked and destroyed some of the camera equipment. The scientists were terrified. They described the actions of the creatures as aggressive and predatory. The scientists said that after the equipment was destroyed, the animals let out terrible screams before disappearing back down into the water. Wedgies. The first people to tell stories of these creatures was a group of American Indians called the Wampanoag. They described Wedgies as being 2 or 3 feet tall, somewhat human, but with big noses, fingers, and ears. Their skin is described as being a smooth gray, and at times has been known to glow. Many Native Americans say that Wedgies have the following traits and abilities. They can appear and disappear at will. They can transform into a walking porcupine. It looks like a porcupine from the back, and the front half is troll, half human, and walks upright. They can attack people and lure them to their deaths. They are able to use magic. They have poison arrows. They can create fire at will. Native Americans believed that Wedgies were best left alone. When you see a Wedgie, you're not supposed to mess with them. or they will repay you by playing nasty tricks on you or by following you and causing trouble. They were once friendly to humans, but then turned against them. They are known to kidnap people, push them off cliffs, attack their victims with short knives and spears, and to use sand to blind their victims. The Loveland Frogs. Like the Wuhan Toads, these amphibious nightmares have shocked and terrified businessmen, farmers, and policemen, and remain one of the most intriguing cryptozoological mysteries of our time. The story of these unique creatures begins in May of 1955 on a lonely stretch of road that runs along the Little Miami River in Clermont County, just on the outskirts of a small town known as Loveland, Ohio. At approximately 3:30 a.m., an unnamed businessman claimed to have witnessed 3 bipedal quasi-reptilian entities congregating by the side of the road. The man pulled his car to the curb and observed these creatures for what he estimated to be about 3 minutes. During this time, he noticed that these strange beings stood between 3 and 4 feet tall, were covered with leathery skin, and had webbed hands and feet. Their most distinguishing characteristic, however, was their distinctly frog-like heads, which the man claimed bore deep wrinkles where the hair should have been. Just as the man was about to steal away, one of the creatures suddenly held what the witness could only describe as a wand above its head. The anonymous source further claimed that sparks spewed out of the end of this device. Needless to say, he left post-haste. Thus begins the bizarre legend of the Loveland Frogmen. This tale would be fascinating enough if it ended there, but the 2 most significant encounters in this case, and indeed 2 of the most significant encounters in the annals of cryptozoology, were yet to come. At about 1 a.m. on March 3, 1972, nearly 17 years after the first report, a police officer, who understandably chose to remain anonymous, was traveling along Riverside Road heading towards Loveland when he saw something that would forever change his life. The officer claimed that he was driving slowly due to the substantial amount of ice on the road when he saw what looked like a dog by the curb. Suddenly, the animal darted in front of the cruiser, forcing the officer to slam on the brakes in order to avoid a potential collision with the creature. Once the police cruiser came to a halt, its headlights fell upon the prone animal. At this point, the officer described something that seems literally too bizarre to be true. In the span of seconds, this crouched, frog-like creature stood on 2 legs, stared back at the policeman, then scrambled over the guardrail and scurried down the embankment, finally disappearing into the Little Miami River. The policeman described the creature as being 3 to 4 feet tall and weighing in the area of 50 to 75 pounds. He also claimed that its skin had a leathery texture and that the animal's features resembled those of a frog or lizard. Another policeman investigated the scene later that evening. He saw no sign of the creature but reported that there were distinct scratch marks on the guardrail where the animal purportedly crossed. The second sighting occurred 2 weeks later when policeman Mark Matthews had an encounter of his own. According to the report, Officer Matthews, while driving into Loveland, spotted what he believed to be an injured animal lying on the pavement. Matthews climbed out of his cruiser with the intention of removing the carcass from the already ice-slicked road when the creature abruptly lurched upwards into a crouched position. Taken aback by the frogman's reptilian visage, Matthews unholstered his revolver and took a shot at the creature, which then proceeded to hobble over to the side of the road and step over the guardrail, all the while keeping a watchful eye on Matthews. The frogman matched the first officer's description down to the last detail, with the exception of a tail which was absent in earlier reports. In the years following these events, Officer Matthews has reneged somewhat on his tale. He now claims that the animal in question was nothing more than a large reptile which likely escaped from its owner. He further insists that the only reason he shot at the creature was to help confirm a fellow officer's story, a story which was, of course, being met with predictable skepticism by their superiors. It should be noted that later on, during the year of the Matthews encounter, a farmer reported seeing 4 bizarre creatures while inspecting his fields, which were located adjacent to the Little Miami River. The farmer claimed that the eyes of the frogmen were large and circular. Their skin was a pale greenish gray, and perhaps most disturbingly, that their mouths were wide and filled with sharp teeth. Thankfully, instead of attacking the poor man, these many monsters stayed true to form and made their escape back into the river, from where they have yet to be seen again. Arguably, the most intriguing aspect of this case is the apparent use of a technological device, the sparkling wand, in the earliest reported encounter with these creatures. It has led some investigators to suggest that these beasts may not be just anomalous animals, but intelligent beings, possibly from out of this world. And that concludes another episode of the Shadowland Radio Show. Thank you for listening to the program. The Shadowland Radio Show can be heard exclusively on the Blackwater Media YouTube channel. I'm Dr. William Lester, reminding you to like, subscribe, and share. I promise to see each and every one of you again on the flip side.